Yes, here with the legend, Martin Atkins.
Hey man.
Martin, welcome from Chicago. I take it that's where you're at today.
Yeah, 35th and Halstead, down by the White Sox, if there is such a thing anymore.
Welcome
I
from
don't know.
Chicago. I take it that's where you're at. Hang on one second. I got the replay playing back here.
Uh-oh.
But is it 1,000 degrees there, or how is it?
90. It's all right. It's been all right.
I have to turn the AC off when I do the interviews because it, hums greatly over the interview.
Oh,
And
wow.
I think it's 100 degrees here right now.
Where are
And
you? Oh, can you say where you are?
yeah, I'm in Los Angeles,
Okay.
where it's currently melting. And
Yeah, I
you still there?
are you frozen? Did I freeze for a second there?
I was wondering if you froze or you're just hesitating in what you were saying.
I hesitated because I thought you froze.
I could have frozen. Let's hope we don't freeze anymore, though, because it seems pretty stable all along.
Okay.
But
Look at us, hats and glasses. We could be a duo.
yes, I agree. We definitely have dueling glasses.
Yeah, yeah.
So you're sitting in your, is that the invisible headquarters? Is there another name for the headquarters other than
No, Invisible HQ.
HQ?
We used to have the whole building. Now it's this kind of beautiful high ceiling basement with kind of crazy ceiling.
Nice.
There's the behind me. That you might recognize the Washington Mutual Bank font. I stole a sign from Washington Mutual Bank, and then I gave my friend Mark Cates, he used to run Grand Royal for the Beastie Boys, and now he manages MGMT. I gave him the W, the G, the M, and the T, and he turned the W upside down. So he has MGMT on his wall, courtesy of me via Washington Mutual, and I've got that. Sometimes it says shit, sometimes it says hits, depending. My studio's over there. I got kind of a hybrid digital analog studio for any of the geeks out there. Running Logic. I was running an old Mackie 32.8 console, but I just replaced that, about to replace it with a PreSonus Studio 64 Live. But then I have tape delays, Eventide 949, 969, Intersound spring reverbs and EQs and all kinds of geeky, fucking awesome dub shit. That's over there. And then we got screen printing in the back. And this is kind of almost this little arty reception area. This is pretty interesting.
Wow.
The hubcap marimba. That is pieces of the frame of the ministry cage from the what you call that, in case you didn't feel like showing up tour.
Legendary.
And then we did the first North American tour with Test Department, and they went straight to the scrap yards and made this hubcap marimba. I love the Mercedes hubcap. And so that piece has what you would call provenance in museum world, because it's the ministry cage repurposed by Test Department. It doesn't get any more industrial than that. And this seems like I just created this pile of shit to show you, but this is just my basement. This is this is the scenery from Killing Joke. Money is not our god. There's another piece there. This is the first scenery I made. Just an enlargement of a dollar bill, which is illegal. It's technically counterfeiting to print that. And then Paul Raven spray painted the whole thing. We had just miles and miles of this fabric with these dollar bills. That's for the Money Is Not Our God video. Yeah, and this behind me, Team Pigface 94. Our mutual friend Danny Carey played in front of this backdrop for 10 days in 1994. Yeah.
Man, I'm
Yeah.
honored by the show and tell. It's you were saying that the one over your other shoulder is from Flowers of Romance.
Uh, yeah. This is, I don't know. I'm, I'm trying. Okay, can you see there? That's the Mickey Mouse watch that I bought at Disneyland in 1980, and we used in is that Four Enclosed Walls? Boom, 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 bah, bah,
Ba,
bah,
ba,
boom, 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 boom.
ba.
Yeah. Or maybe banging the door. I don't know. Fuck. I don't know. But I used to I took that watch home to England, and I used to fall asleep in my apartment, speeding, and then fall asleep with that watch underneath my pillow, weirdly. And I'd hear these. And then one day I went in to see Nick Launay was engineering the Flowers of Romance album, and I said, "Hey, I want to play drums." He's like, "Yes, yes, but I want to play drums to this Mickey Mouse watch. I can hear rhythms inside of it." And instead of telling me to fuck off, um, uh, he's like, "Yes," and he put the watch on top of a floor tom tom, so it resonated. And then he put two microphones on it and put it through a Poupleson harmonizer or some amazing piece of gear for 1982. And then I played drums to this soup of Mickey Mouse watches. That's the this
Amazing.
is a shirt I wore on American Bandstand, Metal Box. I was talking about this yesterday. This is what you want. This is what you get. Yeah,
Is that featuring the song "This Is Not a Love Song" on that album as well?
yeah,
Or was that separate?
yeah. No, it was released as a single first, and it's on that album. It's the biggest selling, uh, shittiest but biggest selling PIL single to date. Yeah. Uh,
Just
I, I had a very interesting Zoom last week, and Bob Miller, who engineered that album and used to mix us live, Pete Jones, who played bass on the original version of it, Larry White, who managed Davy Jones, tour managed Pete Townsend and managed PIL for a while. Larry was on the call, and Ted Cohen, who was also on the first tour in 1980. We were all exchanging stories, and Bob Miller said, I think everybody always thinks it's their idea to do something, but I believe Bob when he said one day, he just said, "Why don't you guys do a disco song?" And so we did. And that was "This Is Not a Love Song."
being a big fan, it didn't really rub me the wrong way. I thought it was like a great sort of thing to do at that time. It was kind of like the peak quintessential moment, really, for Pill at that moment, kind of coming out of the shadows of.
Well, and if you remember 83, 82, 83, Don't You Want Me Baby, Human League,
Right.
fuck, Daryl Hall and John Oates, 82, UB40, Red Red Wine, it was really pop. Heaven 17, Penthouse and Pavement, and then nobody batted an eyelid that they went on to then resurrect Tina Turner's career,
Right.
right? It didn't seem, I was thinking about this yesterday. It didn't seem to us then strange in any way. That's like we were cutting edge. Fuck off! It's Johnny Rotten. We would fight as much as we make music. We were quite threatening, but it didn't seem like sellout or poppy or whatever for Heaven 17 to work with Tina Turner or for us to be on the same bill as Annie Lennox. It was just we were all really, really interested in music. Same thing with Al and Ministry. Cold Life. I don't know when that was written, but it's just a pop song with horns. Cold, bip-a-da-bip, life, bip-a-da-bip. It's like we were all trying to get to that place where you could make a Michael Jackson record almost.
Right.
Everybody was just practicing their craft and experimenting and absorbing ideas from the past, and it was kind of an awesome time, really.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the record companies were also supporting bands to try and get to that point too. So was that also happening?
Well, it was different for us. You know, I've had my ups and downs with John, but and I'll argue with journalists who say, you know, John's vision, thinking that John, as the band leader, went into the studio with a vision for a song. Martin, get your Mickey Mouse watch. I want you to play. He didn't do any of that. He would walk into the studio at the end and miraculously sing a fully formed pop arrangement over some bizarre jazz maniac industrial shit that we'd made. And so for us, we were allowed to do that. We were allowed to work in the same studios, Phil Collins and Queen, because it's fucking Johnny Rotten. It was a year after the Pistols, you know. So he was probably arguably then one of the most recognizable music celebrities in the world. And so what he did do, other than walking in with fully formed miraculous arrangements and vocals, he allowed us to use that notoriety as carte blanche in the studio, and the labels had to deal with it. And I saw it happen when Trent did "I Want to Fuck You Like an Animal." There was only a certain point that he couldn't have done that as his first song. The labels would have said, "Well, we can't release this." But because it was his follow-up to "Head Like a Hole" and all that, and Pretty Hate Machine, everybody kind of had to play it. And so John was really smart at elbowing people out of the way for his band. I don't think the labels were particularly supportive. I think most things that we released were pretty heavily criticized. That was my recollection. Now, of course, Pitchfork are like, "Oh, the Flowers of Romance." Like, fuck off. You know, 30 plus years later, you like it, you know. But I think that, especially when Larry White came along, who I think you've met Larry, you know Larry. I think he was at the house in Malibu a couple of times. He helped us manipulate the labels as much as we should have been doing by proposing live albums. Like Live in Tokyo was a deal to pay off a debt, you know. The video was paid for by the label in Japan because they got the album for free. So then we got to sell the video to Virgin. I mean, it was, we got better at doing that. I think labels used to be more supportive. You know, you read about Bruce Springsteen's Born to Run, his third album, and he better get a hit this time. Like, labels would give bands 3 to 5 years to find their way. And now you've got 3 to 5 minutes, kind of.
Yeah. I always thought that it was interesting that out of the punk genre, the the next direction that Pill took, I kind of was following along, and I happened to be in Japan at the time in 1980 when second edition, aka Metal Box, came out, and I was listening to it in a host family home with a bunch of Japanese people. I put it on, and I remember looking at their faces like just mass confusion of like what it was. And so I thought, like, I better make a cassette of this, and I would ride around in my car listening to the album, and all of a sudden I was hearing the lyrics, like the drive through the forest in a Japanese car, the smell of rubber on country tar.
Wow.
Sight does me no good. You know, it was like really ringing true to me. Here's my car in those days. It's kind of crazy.
Crap.
But I thought it was, now when I look back, and that album has kind of cemented itself as so unique, the way that you guys, and the way, I mean, at the time with Flowers of Romance as well, that you were taking drums and using that as like a forefront instrument, and then sort of like taking influences of dub and utilizing that with like punk poetry, almost like a whole new. It was definitely the creation, I think, of a whole new genre in itself. I mean, when you came along with Bad Baby, and you were just, did you answer an ad in a magazine to try out, or how did that come about?
So, so I started playing when I was 9. I started playing in bands, cover bands, and original bands when I was like 11 or 12, backing strippers in the north of England. And by the time I was 16, I was playing in front of 600 people a night with this band called The Mind, MYND. And they toured Belgium. That's the reason I wanted to join them, because the posters all over the north of England said "fresh from their tour of Belgium," which of course was just horse shit. But I'm like, oh, they're international, and so we're playing these big university places. We had this big Mercedes truck, you know, and backing strippers on a Sunday. We had a cover band on the side. I'm playing 8 gigs a week. And so I get to 17, I'm like, is this it? Is this fucking it? You know, this, I mean, we were making a lot of money. And so my dad arranged for me to go down to London for some auditions, which I called ads in Melody Maker. The back of Melody, there was no internet. The back of Melody Maker weekly music paper was all ads. And I set up like 5 auditions. I'm gonna make it, you know. And so I went down to London. I need to use my own kit, which was ridiculous. And I go to one location, audition with the band. Sometimes after I'd sit through all of the auditions, they'd take me to the next location I needed to be. I ran out of money almost immediately. And I ended up in a pub in Elephant and Castle or Wandsworth Road or somewhere, with not much money. And I just said to the barman, excuse me, I think I was fucking 18. Excuse me, I don't have a place to stay. Is there do you know of any place I can stay? And this drunk couple are like, yeah, you can stay with us. And they put me in their daughter's room. So I'm in a room with 2 kids. And then the next day they leave to go to work. You're all right, here's a key. And it was like, it was insane, really. And I think I had £4, enough to get Melody Maker on the Wednesday, because it came out on Wednesday in London, Thursday everywhere else in the country. And I think my first Chinese meal, so kind of cut rate £1.50 lunch. And I open up Melody Maker, and I know this is a long story, but there you go.
That's great.
And there was an ad, and it said drummer required for band with rather well-known singer. I still have the ad somewhere. And I thought, oh, fuck, that's John's new band, because the Pistols had split up. And I called the number. Hello, Virgin Records. I'm like, oh, fuck, it is.
Oh,
It's
wow.
John's. And I'm like, hey, it's me, Martin. I'm your guy. I'm really, really good. I don't give a shit. I'm exactly the drummer you need, because I've been playing since I was 9, 8 shows a week. Great. I'll come down for an audition. And they're like, well, auditions are Friday. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't have any money. I've got to leave. I'm leaving in the morning. So if I could get an audition today, like where I got off asking, you know, and they're like, yeah, you do sound great, but auditions are Friday. And so I'm like, well, I can't do it. The next morning, my dad had arranged for a moving company he did some work with to pick me and my drums up in London. And I load up my drums. And every mile, as the truck went each mile closer to the north of England, I'm like, what a fucking mistake. Why didn't I just stay there and starve for a day? I don't know. And so almost as soon as I got back to Durham, where I was living, close to Newcastle, I called up the band I was with, The Mind, and I said, guys, I want to tell you the truth. I went to London for some auditions. I don't think I've got any of the jobs, but I'm moving to London. And they're like, oh. And they called me back an hour later. Yeah, we're going to move too. Good idea. So we all moved to London together. I got a job working for the government. And I mean, we were on speed. I mean, it was crazy. 77, 78. And Pill's first album came out. And that first single, Public Image, just gave me goosebumps. It just gave me fucking goosebumps.
Yeah.
And as each drummer, Jim Walker left pretty quickly. And then Richard Dudansky, somebody else. There's 4 drummers on Metal Box.
Is there really?
Yeah. Richard Dudansky, somebody else from The Fall, somebody else who I was in contact with like last year.
Wow. Did not know.
Yeah. And so I was up. I used to be speeding all the time. So I was up. The television would stop at 10:30 or 11 at night. And I'm reading through an old copy of Melody Maker. And I see Pill's 4th drummer set on fire. Oh, Carl Burns. Carl Burns how weird, ironic, right? Carl Burns set on fire. And I called up, by which time they'd already hired somebody else and fired them. And so at this point, after over a year in London, I called Virgin regularly. One time I called Virgin and they said, well, Jeanette's here. I'm like, oh, okay, who's that? So I end up speaking to Jeanette. She says, well, call me at my mum's house. So I call her at her mum's house. She's not there. I end up chatting with her mum. I just started to know everybody. I was kind of stalking Pill. And so I guess October 79, I think. I end up talking with Keith Levine. He says, yeah, come to the townhouse at 4 o'clock. We'll call you. And I thought they meant 4 in the afternoon. Like, why? They meant 4 in the morning. And they were at the Townhouse Studio A, which is where Queen recorded We Will Rock You.
Right.
Studio B with the Stone Drum Room is where Phil Collins recorded In the Air Tonight. And we did The Flowers of Romance. And I did Extremities for Killing Joke there.
Nice.
And so there was all these mixed messages. I missed a call. Keith was pissed at me. 2 nights later, they said, well, come over. I walk into this huge studio. To me, it was the size of a basketball court, and maybe it is, with a huge plexiglass drum room all the way in the back. And honestly, as I sat down, I put on the headphones, and somebody says, rolling. And I just went, oh, and that was, a wobble starts playing, and that was Bad Baby.
Bad Baby. Classic track.
And I went back the next morning. I went back to my job just off Trafalgar Square working for the government. And it was like 8 more weeks before I kind of auditioned, just me and Wobble. Wobble told Jeanette, book the gig, which was the Paris show.
Right.
We did John Peel. We did Old Grey Whistle Test, and then came over to America in April 1980. It's fucking crazy, really.
That was great. I remember when we lived together for a bit in Malibu. I asked you this story, but I always find it just great that, you know, you had Jim Walker, who was ironically from Vancouver originally, from one of the first punk bands Vancouver ever had called the Furies. He kind of got known as like this guy that went over and did that, but then kind of disappeared. Like there's really not been much talk about Jim Walker, really too much.
I see him bubbling around a bit now.
Okay.
You know, he's in the Public Image is Rotten, which is a decent. I think it's a bit long. It goes on for about an extra 40 minutes. I was really interested in the bit before me. Jim Walker was interviewed. They did a show in Belgium, Brussels. They did a show in London on Christmas Day, which was very strange. Every single place, pub, restaurant, everywhere was closed on Christmas. But Pill did a show at the Rainbow. And he said there wasn't any money, but there obviously was lots of money and he just was like, fuck this, you know. And I was having the same conversations with Pete Jones, uh, bass player in 1983 in New York at the Iroquois Hotels. Like, we're playing to 3,500 people at Roseland, and Harvey Keitel and Martin Scorsese were there, but there's no fucking money. But there obviously was a lot of money. The same money problems persisted, I think, which is a shame.
There was a funny story that Jaw Wobble told about taking a shoebox full of money from a tour, and also saying that wasn't actually paid. Was that before your time, or was
No?
that
So it's really weird. I fucking love Wobble. We did the Damage Manual together, and we still talk and tweet regularly. He called me when my dad died, and but it's strange. Keith is only 2 years older than me, but because he was in a Clash before Pill, and because he was in Pill before I was in Pill, it's almost like somebody who is 2 years ahead of you at school. It seems like they're 2 generations ahead of you, you know? And so, but when I joined, Wobble was still in the band. We did that first American tour with Wobble. We used to have breakfast every morning and hang out. And I still have my diary from that tour. And it's weird as I am like enthusiastically describing show number 3, Wobble is counting down, 7 more shows to go before I'm out of this fucking, and I didn't know, and he came home from that tour, went to Gunter Grove where John was living, knew where the shoebox of money was, grabbed it. But yeah, I mean, I got paid £60 a week, whether we were doing nothing or whether we were playing in Paris 2 nights, sold out, or touring America. I got £60 a week.
Wow.
Like, fortunately, I got co-writes and credit for most of the things I co-wrote. Otherwise, I think I would have been really upset. But yeah, money was strange with Pill back then.
I was lucky enough to see you. I'm going to say this was 12th of November, 1982. And I still have the ticket stub. And you played the Showbox in Seattle.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So it was probably the Flowers of Romance tour at that point.
Yeah, we would have done a couple of, we probably did Bad Life, which was called Lou Reed Part 1 and Lou Reed Part 2. We were working on a couple of those new songs, working them into the set. Wow.
See, for me, that was like a legendary time because, yeah, as you say, Johnny Rotten was, if you saw him with your eyes, you couldn't keep your eyes off him. And that show was like, I remember I took a bus down to Seattle with a whole bus full of punk rockers, and man, it was memorable. But the show, is something I've never forgotten how good it sounded. It was that room. It's funny, it still exists today. The Showbox.
Well, we stayed at the Edgewater Hotel. Is that Seattle?
I'm not sure.
I think it might be. You could fish out of your hotel window. And it sounded like, oh, wow, the Italian Riviera, except it was just like a motel that some of the rooms in the back, you happen to be able to like open a window and fish. So we would like coked out of our heads, throwing flashlights into the water so the fish could see that we were out of our minds. It's amazing someone didn't lose an eye in some kind of fishhook accident, So that would have been Pete Jones on bass, I think.
Right.
Keith, Bob Miller would have been doing sound. And one of the things that Bob really pioneered with us was something we called BFX, which was 60 cycles and down, just several bass cabinets on either side that were crossed over to only be ultra low bass. And it was a physical weapon.
Yes, I remember. Yeah. Something sounded different at that show.
Yeah.
But it worked, and it was memorable. But I always thought that when you came along, I mean, I didn't even actually know that you weren't the drummer before, the way that you just slipped in, you did the Peel sessions in Perio, pretemps, what, within very short period of time. And actually careering on Perio pretemps is my favorite version of Perio.
Oh, thank you.
But my metal box came with a poster. And I'm wondering if this is Jim or you. It has a red drum kit.
Oh,
It's Roger's drum kit.
that's weird.
Is that you or Jim?
Is that me?
It's a great poster. I had this on my wall for years.
Be Jim from Russell's show. That as well. Uh-oh, did I freeze?
You did for a second.
Did I freeze there, Kevin?
I think you froze for a second, but you're back. I've had this freezing problem with other guests before, but we work around it.
That's strange because I fucking hated that Rogers kit. All the fittings were just like plumbing fixtures, you know. It was this no, and yeah, I used that kit on the first US tour, but I could have after the first US tour in 1980, maybe after Flowers of Romance, that would have been a pretty decent career, you know. Metal Box, second edition, John Peel, American tour, American Bandstand, Paris au Printemps, Flowers of Romance, you know. But that was the first year of it. It was a crazy fucking time back then. Such a crazy time.
Like, okay, as a kid again, you're going here 1980. You've got American Bandstand, and where I grew up, there was a rumor that you guys were going to be on. You couldn't go onto the internet or check in any magazines to see if it was true. So the first rumor confirmation I had was checking in TV Guide, and there it was, public images, and I could not believe that this was about to happen. And I watched it live, and honestly, you know, it stayed with me ever since. That is a revolutionary moment. That was the moment that American Bandstand kind of like changed. It changed it forever. You've got the end of an evolutionary disco era with a guy that's pop king. And then you've got Pill on there defying, like, I think it was the first anti-performance that probably American Bandstand ever had.
Well, you know, I don't know if have you seen the photographs from John Brian King? Oh my goodness, I use them in my Pill presentations, and there's a shot of Dick Clark from the side, and I can look at that photograph for 15 minutes, and there's this backstory, there's a seething anger, there's a despondency, it feels like he's giving up. It's come to this, you know. It's magic, and the photographs are amazing. I still have the sign from the dressing room door. I have a picture of me with it in my hand as well from 1980. But it was a moment. And there's the shirt I wore on it. But also, I had no idea what it was. I think John might have. Keith didn't. Keith didn't know much of what was going on. Honestly, I'm not being nasty. He had his own thing going on. I don't think Wobble knew what American Bandstand was either. So Dick Clark came into the dressing room. Hey! And Wobble said, "I'm Joe Wobble. Who the fuck are you?" And I don't think, why would anybody have ever said that to Dick Clark in his life? Because everybody knew who he was. And I'm sure Dick Clark thought we were being assholes, but we didn't know who he was. So now you look back, and Warner Brothers were trying to prepare us for edited versions of Pop Tones and Careering. So, of course, the vocals were going to land differently. Didn't matter for me. Didn't matter for Wobble. You know, most of those songs were quite loopy, transcendent, loopy stuff. But for John, he had no idea where the vocals were going to hit. So I think that's one of the reasons John started running around. And one of the things that happens with Pill is, you know, John could come on stage with an umbrella. because there was a leak in the roof. And people would go, oh, what he's saying is, it's a shield. Punk is rain, and he's shielding himself from old punk. Like, it's not an umbrella. Like, everything was a metaphor and a message with John, you know. And but you're right. What a remarkable. People use the term charismatic. You know, your bandmate Kevin is certainly Ogre is certainly one of those charismatic people. Chris Connolly, Jazz Coleman, but John is absolutely on another level. And I had the. Oh, it sounds like I'm trying to get my old job back, but I'm not. But I had the honor, like the privilege, there you go, to sit behind him, to sit like this far away from him. And just like when I was backing the strippers in the north of England, I could see all the guys' faces just mesmerized by naked women. I could see 3,500 people. I mean, I could have set my hair on fire, and a news crew could have shown up saying, hey, song number 5, the drummer set his hair on fire. What do you think? And people would be like, what drummer?
Ooh.
You know, I mean, it was just an undeniable, oh, this is charisma, you know.
Yes.
And in some ways, in the same way that his previous career and his charisma protected us from the label and gave us some credibility, gave us some room to maneuver. That air of his, that charisma, was also a force field that kind of protected us, because back in those days, Pill was so anti-rock and roll that, you know, Larry White, the tour manager, would say, well, we need to have a meeting with security. No security. Okay. What about the lights? The lighting engineer and his assistant, no lights, turn all the lights on in the building. I mean, it was like, we didn't have any t-shirts to sell, which I said at the time I thought was ridiculous. But sometimes the only thing standing between 10,000 people at the Olympic Auditorium and us was John's stare, you know.
Right.
Wild.
So I hope that there were certain times when John would let down the edge for you guys that were in the band. I had one personal experience, again, it's kind of funny. In 1984, I was at Magic Mountain, and I was there with my buddy. And who should roll up but John Lydon, just walking along, and he was with you. And
yeah.
You were wearing a Pill shirt. And of course, that I just identified everything. So my friend Gary Smith walked up to him and said, hey, John, what are you doing here? And he said, oh, just pissing about. And what was really funny is that we were in a band at the time. It was like a super new wave band. And so our hair was all purple. We had like us dyed, you know, and in those days we used to get really, really called out being punk rock. So we ended up walking like down the same direction where you guys were to the exit. And everyone was like flaming on me and my friend because we had the purple hair. They didn't even realize that the king of punk rock is literally like 5 steps ahead of us. And I was like, well, what are you yelling at me for? Let's see this guy. And what's funny is that we went to our car.
Oh my God.
I snapped this photo.
Oh my goodness.
And you can't really see it because it's so blurry, but it's basically John in the back flipping us off.
Yeah.
And you can't really see. It was like 1984.
So I used to shoot 35 millimeter color slides, and I've got some great ones from the log ride that goes through the water. I mean, you know, and I'm behind John, and he's got his like, it's almost like a car dealer's visor that he used to wear sideways, you know. And I think he was with his brother Martin Lydon. I've got some great pictures from I'm going to look at those slides. I'm going to scan them and look through them. I wonder if you're in the background of one of these slides somewhere.
I could be, man.
Wow.
So was his brother? Would that have been the 4B2?
No, that was Jimmy. That was Jimmy Lydon.
Okay.
Martin was his younger brother. He might, when I joined Pill, he was probably 13 or 14. He ended up moving to California. He was my drum tech for a while.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't think it was a very good situation. It kind of pissed me off. Like I actually need a drum tech. I mean, you know, but that must have been difficult for him, to be John's brother. You just go and hang out with your brother. It's like, yeah, but what about my snare drum?
Right.
Yeah. Wow. And I thought it was crazy that our paths had crossed in Miami with Killing Joke and Skinny Puppy. But then to find out that our paths had crossed 4 or 5 years before that, it's insane. It's insane.
It is, and I think so the first time I ever met you, I have it here.
Oh,
there you are.
Oh, wow!
With your classic fuck shirt. I think you had that around for a while. And there's Mont, who now this has kind of turned into like a legendary weekend. This was at this place called the Seagull Hotel.
Yeah.
In Miami, and what was really weird is it was a hotel. It was like being run by Mont, and then no other responsible adult in sight.
Yeah.
And they threw you guys down, and you guys did an amazing show at the Cameo, I remember. And then we had this party, and they flew us down just to be at that party. So this was our first meeting, actually.
Wow. Wow.
It's 1988.
And it's so cool to see Dwayne and Jordy and Jazz. Yeah. Yeah.
That was, it's what's weird is that it's a long time ago, but it doesn't seem that long ago to me. I can remember it well. It's very strange.
Right. And it's interesting for me. So I'm 50 feet from my screen printing shop, and you see the beginning of me. That shirt was, the number when you pull the screen. There's one fuck. So that shirt probably took me 5 hours to make. I was doing that with I made clothes for Steve Albini, and I give everybody fuck shirts, and always used to wear that fuck shirt. This is before Hot Topic existed, I think.
I remember your shirts were always legend. The Pigface shirts have always been, everything that you were making on the screen was always like had all sorts of detail and stuff, and even put it into your stage and your backdrop now with Pigface. It's so cool.
Well, we do. I just started. I tell, I write these music business books, and I do events to try and help people. I try and tell people in bands, create the museum of you. Because if you don't, no fucker else is going to. And like, whilst the extra scenery for the Killing Joke video, or new and different scenery for every single Pigface tour was completely unnecessary, really, it's now the reason I can block out a huge gallery space and have these huge pieces of art, even too big for scenery, really, some of them 40 feet high, and create the spectacle, which creates a way to meet people and talk and create other events. I love that shit. And now I'm doing, I just started, I have my own brand of coffee called Get the Fuck Out of Bed. And I'm just going to grab this. Hold on a second.
Here it is. I have it right here, Martin.
Oh, what you got? Oh, okay, you got that. But then I just did this. I did.
Stay in the shower.
Stay in the shower. Okay, so
look at this. It's called Jaded Hippie.
Yeah. So
I thought that was perfect for me.
It's excellent. That's organic coffee soap made from Get the Fuck Out of.
Oh, we got to freeze. Oh, you're back.
Am I back?
Is that what advanced entrepreneurship is really? Is just really finding ways to have fun and with items.
Yeah, I mean, it's also punk as fuck. It is. The last 12 weeks. Say what?
And the coffee is excellent.
Oh, thanks. Well, that's Dark Matter Coffee. But for me, so 12 weeks ago, I was at Dark Matter Coffee and they're like, fuck, we've got 7 locations. We've got to close them down. We've got 110 employees. And I immediately put $100 in their employee GoFundMe. And as good as that felt, there's $100. It also felt completely meaningless. Here's 72 cents per employee, right? So I came home and I did that, get the fuck inside. And then I went back up to Dark Matter. I said, hey, well, they were just almost frozen in fear. Here's 100 of these bags, get the fuck out of bed coffee in them and do something with that, like launch a new product in the middle of this. And they did like 300 bags at $50 a piece with the other bag. So I'm like, well, hold on, that's 15 grand. And then we did get the fuck in the shower. So now we're sending money to my friends at Art Farm, Jaded Hippie, to make the soap, to put in the bags for free so Dark Matter can launch another new brand, right? And I'm working on another one now. So when we do posters, and then I would send these bags with buttons, Busy Beaver buttons, make buttons for us. And we make t-shirts, but we personalize the t-shirts. So Bar Redux New Orleans says, stay the fuck inside. Elysium Austin says, stay the fuck inside. Hope for the Day says, stay the fuck inside. And which is a lot of work. But then these venues, these businesses are putting a t-shirt, a button, and maybe some drinks tickets in a bag and selling the bags for $50 or $80 a piece. And it's creating some momentum, a little bit of fun, and some much needed funds for all these businesses. So I'm relearning how powerful and dangerous creativity is. It's been really, it's been tough because once you start to help people and you can help them in a really positive way, it's difficult to stop helping, you know? So we're helping more and more people. But it feels really good. It feels really good to be doing stuff.
You've been known as a helper in the sense of you've got the Tour Smart, the business of touring, the band smart, how to basically approach being realistic, being in a band without being stupid. And if anyone's ever learned about how to do all this stuff, it's definitely someone who's been there and done that. One thing I got to say is that I know that when you do a Pigface tour, you're very thorough about how you book it. But I know that you love to do no days off. Is that something that you is because it is a drag to sit around, you know, when you got all everybody. And I mean, you'll get to the evening time and you'll think it's a great day off, and by the evening you'll be a little bit bored. You'll be like, wait, why didn't we do a show?
Well, there's a bunch of reasons for it. You know, the 2 or 3 biggest nightmares of trouble on the Ministry tour were days off. I mean, people in jail, people getting bottled, fights. Like, we're driving, I don't even know where we were, Jolly Rogers on the tour, and we're driving, oh, here we go to the highway, and the bus turns in the opposite direction. I'm like, where the hell are we going? To the police station. I mean, you know, so Pigface isn't like that, you know. But when we have 17 people in the band,
right,
you know, you can't have a day off unless if someone wants to give me $5,000, you know.
Right.
Otherwise, it's just one of the things that suffers. Now, can I continue to do that? I mean, I'm 61 in August. Fuck, I don't know. You know, I lost 30 pounds before and during the last Pigface tour in 2019, which is really good for me. So I want to keep doing it. And once you've had 5 drummers on stage, 3 drummers is boring, you know? And we had 3 bass players.
Yeah, it was a great tour. I was able to watch it.
Oh my God. Andrew Weiss from Rollins and Ween, Greta Brinkman and Charles Levi, and me and Danny Carey and Brad Bills. It's like, what the fuck? I mean, and two people playing saxophone, a guy playing saxophone in a unicorn head, you know. I mean, um, so there's a reckoning coming, I think, with Pigface of like, how do I continue to do that? How do I do it again with um, with everybody? And there's also a need to have the next show be crazier than the last one, because people remember this insane show. Here's Randy Blythe from Lamb of God. He came out to do 5 shows and he said, you know what? I cannot leave. I'm doing the whole tour. Like, what? Galen Lee, Chris Connolly, the drummer from Flogging Molly on stage with us in Detroit. And so people romanticize a Pigface show. So in order for the next show to be the way they have embroidered the last show in their head, it needs to be crazier. So I'm not sure how to do it, to keep on doing it.
I think we feel that as musicians to do that. We want to bring crazier and crazier. But to a lot of people, you know, just witnessing the spectacle that's known as Pigface, you know, is something that you guys, again, as you said, you could probably, you know, not worry as much. I mean, seeing the spectacle of all you guys and how well you guys have presented everything, it's unbelievable. I had Curse on here a few weeks ago, and he was talking. You guys had a West Coast set of dates booked for Pigface that unfortunately had to get canceled because of this whole mess that's going on with the COVID. But how many dates was that in a row?
We had 42 dates in a row booked, which would have been finishing like today or tomorrow. And it's tough, but so, you know, Chris Connolly and I have gone up and down. I love Chris a lot. We've done so much together, but it's certainly been a little bit like that. You know how that goes. But I love the guy, and he was flying out to do some West Coast dates, wanted to be in Seattle a day early to hang with Bill Rieflin. I was going to come out early too, say hi. We knew he was ill. And then Barbara Rukoft, who is in, I think, Portland now. She played cello on the Fook album and toured with us. All of Mary Biker, Leslie Rankine, Enesh, 80 or 90% of the people still living who were on the Fook album were going to be performing songs from Fook. And everything was aligning. And then the pandemic hits. Bill Rieflin died. Genesis P. Orridge died. I'm like, oh, you know.
R.I.P. R.I.P.
Yeah, just, you know, we put little tributes to past members on the back of the tour passes, and we're running out of room, you know.
Yeah, really. It is getting crazy, isn't it, like that? The RIPs are getting a long list these days. Yeah. Between your friends in Killing Joke and Ministry, my God, the list just goes on and on.
And it's tough. It's like, you know, it's difficult to explain to somebody what it's like. When Paul Raven died, we were connected at the hip as a rhythm section. And you know, working in digital audio, the difference between a vibe and no vibe is milliseconds of things lining up. And my drums were louder when we played together. And I didn't understand why until I started working in digital audio. I'm like, holy shit, there's just a thing. And but it was tough when he died. It might be 10 years since he passed. But to still experience songs and recordings with that person on them, you know, I don't mean to open up a wound for you either, Kevin, but it's like, fuck, it changes how you listen to material. It changes how you are with other people. And then in addition to that, to have this fairly new world of Facebook reminder land.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, where it's like, look, I can decide if I'm going to listen to a song that Raven and I are on, or Genesis P. Orridge, or Bill, whoever. I can get ready, I can prepare myself, and I can bathe in that experience. When it just comes at you on Facebook because you're just checking something, it's really strange, and I found it a little bit difficult to navigate. And so, yeah, it's a different time for us, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of glad you brought that up that way because, you know, you were there in the last, really the last waltz, whatever you want to call it, of Dwayne's life, and you witnessed him go from being relatively normal to complete shatter, I think you might say. And that whole experience at the house, I mean, so for me, when I want to encapsulate something, I look at it and I think like about what you talk about labels and how labels can manipulate to twist and try and turn something into something that maybe it might not be. And I could, you know, clearly see now, back when I look at that time, about how American and Rick Rubin were really trying to twist something out of us that really wasn't the natural progression. But, you know, we all made some crazy mistakes in how we went and tried to go into a house and make an album as well, bringing everybody's issues together, and then also, you know, opening the door for massive drug abuse and other situations to go on within the house. And you came in and you probably must have just imagined, I can't imagine what you must have thought.
Well, I mean, it wasn't anything that I hadn't experienced, if that makes sense. But what a fucking mess. I remember, and this is, I thought about this because I think one of the things that informed my approach to the first couple of weeks at the house, because I'd sit with Ken Marshall in the room, and like insects would come crawling out of the console, you know, and sand would come wafting through the studio. By the time I'd listened to 19 songs, I couldn't remember you know, I'm like, it just became an informational crisis. So I started doing spreadsheets and which I just, I use that approach to go back to the recording of Commercial Zone, and This Is What You Want, This Is What You Get in New York. There are 17 rolls of 2-inch tape, Kevin. There's like 46 songs, and we didn't have an album, you know. And I don't know if that experience, and you know, that was never resolved. But I think that experience had me come in to the house in Malibu and just try and get some organization. And then
You must have been like, oh, I'm back here again.
Say what?
You must have come in and said, oh no, I'm back at this again.
Well, and I don't know if, you know, I wrote to Rick Rubin, and was it Mark Geiger at the time?
Yeah.
I'm like, I've got the letter somewhere. And you know, we'd had some really serious problems with Keith in PIL. And I think somewhere in that letter it says, look, we don't need to be in a studio without engineering support. I don't mean Ken Marshall or Mark Walk. I mean a staff to clean and back up and do whatever you do with a patch bay to make it keep working. Well, you know, like, this is not the band to put into, to add to all of the problems, right? It's a reason bands went to Berlin to record, is people like Geordie could go and drink for 48 hours and then come back, you know, instead of being in this thing. And um, I think that letter got fairly heated and was ignored. I also had some conversations with management at the time to say, look, why don't we, if we're all in this house, one thing that really helps is literally breaking bread together. It used to happen at the townhouse in London. They had a caterer on staff, and we resolved more interband issues or arrangement issues over the dinner table than we ever did over a console. And the same was true at the Manor recording in England as well. Everybody would come together for a meal, whether you're in a mood or not. The food was so good that everybody would come around the table. And I said to management, look, I'm spending $50 a day myself going out to some Malibu fucking breakfast place.
Right.
Everybody would chip in $30 a day to have a caterer come in, and it would heal. It would start to heal. Not that Dwayne was particularly interested in food at that time, or right, but it would have made organizational sense. And it was such a frustrating situation. And I do know that my letter said, there's an album here. It needs to be mixed, and this band needs to get out on the road. And I think that was a year or even 18 months before the album was actually finished. Yeah,
maybe even longer. I don't think it got finished until after Dwayne died. And so that was certainly later on in 1995. So it was like, yeah, definitely a couple of years later. It was, completely ripped down and put up again, and twice since the time we left California. But I mean, I guess that experience, you got to put it in the book. There has to be a chapter somewhere in the book that was probably inspired by that, I would think.
Yeah, well, I'm doing my memoirs, right? I have so many photographs and bits and pieces. Part one is my 5 years in Pill, and then it will be Killing Joke, Ministry, 9 Inch Nails, Pigface, Puppy, Damage Manual, God knows what, Invisible Records.
Murder Inc.
Oh my goodness, Murder Inc. Yeah.
Opium Jukebox.
Oh yeah. Opium Jukebox.
Yeah, Brian Brain. We could talk about a lot. I mean, the thing I always liked about your stuff is that you have a drumming language. It's probably the most identifiable on Flowers of Romance, or even say, for instance, in Pigface, because some of the beats you do are not that easy. They're turnaround, and you actually, the original drum beat on Candle on this Process you did, and it's still on there. It's the one that flips back and forth.
Yeah,
and it's difficult to play. I mean, I always thought, okay, that was the style that came from having to maybe learn some of the songs that were on like Metal Box or something. But is that something that you had already going in your rapport, your drumming rapport?
That just became a fascination for me, like 3s over 4s. Weightless, Pigface is, somebody said it's 19/7. I'm like, what? I'm just playing it in my head, Blue Water, the B-side of This Is Not a Love Song. Bum, 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 bum. To play off-time rhythms, but not in a skiffly jazz way.
Yeah.
So it's like forceful, so it makes you want to hit the dance floor. But once you're on the dance floor, when your foot goes down, the next time the beat hits, your foot's in the air. I just whoa, and just circular rhythms hit the brain different. So I mean, my drumming comes from all over the place. Some of the under the house stuff, that's like Chieftains, Baran, triplet rhythms. And I think when I joined,
is that a natural thing that you learned yourself, or did you ever take lessons in any way, or you just it's just a natural thing from
Oh,
inspiration?
I had my dad got me lessons when I was really young, and at last it didn't take. I was playing along with Beatles albums and
Yeah.
backing strippers and drinking, and when I was 12, and so sight reading with a snare drum was like, this is useless, you know,
Yeah.
which I think that helped me develop my voice. Also, I've never used a double kick, which um, because I played so much when I was young, my right foot is really fast.
It is. I mean,
And there's a difference between one foot going buh, 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 and 2 feet going do 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 do. The one foot is more insistent, you know. Um, so, and instead of using a second bass drum, I used the floor tone, which then gave a push and a pull. This human thing that with the Damage Manual early stuff, I like to put human push pull stuff over mechanical stuff. You know, just like, you know, it's just sandpit, right? I just like to play around with stuff that pulls you in. And I think sometimes things that are just mechanical can be very, don't pull you in as much
yeah, yeah.
as things that have engineered flaws in them, you know.
So you were re-teaming with Jaw Wobble and Damage Manual, right?
Yeah. Well, what happened was I became really infatuated with a thing called Scorn, Mick Harris,
Right. Yeah, of course.
Ellipsis, Gyral. I fucking love these albums, and so I signed him to like a 5 album deal. He was, I really like his music, but he was very difficult. I'd book a tour for him and he wouldn't show up. I get a call from somebody, he didn't get on the plane. I'm like, what do you mean he didn't get on the plane? You know, Mark Spivey did a show with him in New York. It was Dead Voices on Air, Scorn. And they're like, yeah, he's not here. He didn't get on the plane. Like, and he was supposed to open for Pigface. And he didn't show up for the first 10 shows. By the time he showed up for the 11th, every night I had to walk out on stage and go, I'm terribly sorry, Mick Harris isn't here. And people were like, fuck you. So when he arrived, I was like, thanks a lot, you know, and he had his sleeping bag. He kept journalists waiting so long, they would just leave. You know, they'd come out, I'm ready for my interview. It's like, yeah, nobody else is. So anyway, sorry, I went off on a tangent. So after a while, I thought, why am I hypnotized by Scorn? It's this low end Novation bass station. I'm like, it reminds me of Wobble. And then Mick said to me, actually, 2 of my songs, I sampled Jar Wobble. I'm like, fuck. So I just called up Wobble. I said, I'm coming to London. Do you want to do a project? You know.
Wow, what a great inspiration.
And it turned out Geordie was in town, and I invited Geordie down to the studio, and it was like, it was pretty cool, pretty quick.
Yeah, great combination as well. Yeah, no, Invisible Records, you have supported quite a few artists, such as you said, Mark is on the chat here on the side saying hello, Mark from Dead Voices on Air.
Hey,
And
Mark.
yeah, tons of work with Invisible. The thing that I never knew about is your journeys to China.
Oh, really?
No, I didn't know that you had gone over and done some sussing of the Chinese music scene. What did you discover over there?
Oh, well, so I didn't. It's really weird because I was sitting upstairs when I decided to go. When I decided to go, I want to say 2007, 2006. It was like, whoa, I'm going to fucking China. You know, it was a thing, and it was kind of scary. I connected with a club in Beijing called D22. Some cats from New York, and Michael Pettis from the club said, well, come on over and I'll arrange for 4 bands a night to perform for you. And it was like, okay. So I recorded every band live on a like a Logic setup, and I started to see this kind of my refascination with punk. Um, you'd see all these bands and just fucking pulling themselves out of whatever was going on and experimenting and hitting Blixer. I think was it Blixer? Who are the guys from Neubauten? I think it was Blixer. He was over there like 2 months before me. So, and you'd see the bands he spent time with because they'd bring a metal chair on stage and like bang, 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 start hitting a metal chair. But I became fascinated with a band called Snapline, which were a trio with a drum machine. And all of this different energy was just fantastic. And to be unplugged from my surroundings made me experience things differently. And then I extended my stay 3 times. I ended up booking a studio, and I would take the bands I liked into the studio to record an album very quickly. Like, hey, guess what? You get a day in the studio. But then I'm like, I would start to make beats. And then I invited a traditional Chinese orchestra to come into the studio. And I created loops for them to play to. And then somebody played a guzheng, which is this beautiful, I think it's called cascading instrument. And then one of the engineers had a circuit bent 303, and he wanted to be like, hey, we're cool too. Next thing you know, there's a scratch DJ from down the block. And I started to create it's kind of the lost Pigface album. I made an album in the same way that I make a Pigface album. Like, hey, people say, okay, how does this go? I'm like, I don't know. Let's make it together. And this insane mesh of Beijing street kids, scratch DJs, Tibetan singers, beats, ambient sounds from the streets. Yeah, I had a fucking blast. And then the album I did with Snapline, I signed them to Invisible, flew Ji Chen over here to finish mixing the album here in Chicago. We shot a couple of videos here. We went and had McDonald's with my kids, which was fucking insane. The stories he was telling. And then I went back to record the second Snapline. They became quite successful in China. And I went back to record a second album with them, produce a couple of other bands over there. Yeah.
Where can we hear those albums? Are they released? The first one you were talking about?
Well, there's 2 albums that came from that. There's a compilation of the Beijing scene in 2008. It's called Look Directly into the Sun. I don't know. Is it on? Honestly, I don't know.
I will find it.
And that's kind of funny to me because you can look directly to the sun in Beijing because there's so much pollution. You can't even see where it is anyway. And then the album I made is called China Dub Sound System. And there's some really great kicking beats on there.
I'm really looking forward to hearing this. This is something that I haven't heard yet, so I'm anxious. Is there a way that does Invisible have like a band camp or something that you put stuff like this on, or is it?
No, I think so. What I'm in the middle of at the moment is, so I went to China. I think right at the time I was in China, I was finishing up Tour Smart, and I'd been in the studio 16 hours a day, every day for over a decade. You know the deal. Yeah. And suddenly now I'm doing a book. Like, okay. And I started to teach at Columbia College Chicago. And then the book came out. It became an Amazon Music Business bestseller. And then I'm getting invited to keynote Melbourne Music Week. And I go to Norway South America. And it's like for maybe 5 years, South by Southwest has featured speaker the last 13 years. So it just kind of, I just got pulled out of what I was doing. And it's only now with an army of interns and students making some of this stuff university projects to fuel students and their experiences. I'm just starting to get to grips with the label, the immense amount of stuff that we have. There's so much material from China. I think I'm going to release China Dub Sound System on vinyl with an insanely huge single sheet bed size screen printed political Chinese graphic thing. And at the same time, release beats and loops from these projects, and so people can make their own projects from this stuff. And so I feel like I'm just restarting all of this stuff. Up until this point, kind of, I've been a drummer, a producer, a label owner, a writer, a speaker, a teacher. And what I'm trying to do is all of those things together, which might sound crazy, but it feels like it's the only way for me to continue. Is I want to play my drums. It enables me to do Pigface, and I had students come out on the Pigface tour with Wendy Day, who did the largest hip hop deal in history for Eminem. She was on the tour mentoring students, hanging out. I want to do, for me, the conclusion of all of this is having all of it happen all at the same time together.
I think it's hugely inspiring what you're doing. And I'm honored to be able to chat with you. And I also have heard that you have the Martin Atkins Minute podcast.
Well, that was, I met Bob Boylan from All Songs Considered. And I tell the story to students and back to myself because I'm shy. And once I commit to doing something, sometimes I'll try and find a way to not do it because I'm shy. And so there was an event in Denver and I didn't want to do it. I was going to speak for an hour and a half and it was 2 days away from everybody, but I went and did it. I was looking at it as some money and an opportunity. In the end, I just didn't want to be the guy who canceled. But so I did my thing. Welcome to the music business, you're fucked, or how to make an extra $100,000, or one of the things that I do. And at the end of it, Bob Boylan, who I didn't recognize, I didn't know who he was, hands me his card. He says, I've got to get you on the radio. I'm like, yeah, well, we can do an interview anytime you want. He's like, no, I want you to do something else. I want you to think about it and do something else. I'm interested in having you do something else. Okay. And I thought about it and I started to do a series of almost like speaking stories. My favorite one is called Bad Day. If anybody wants to find it, it's the Martin Atkins Minute, Bad Day. Talks about when I left PIL. I chose to leave PIL at the height of his success. And I ended up almost with my visa running out, planting trees for Bon Jovi's drummer, Tico Torres, and with a fever. And it's like,
where are the podcasts? Where can we hear the podcast?
It's All Songs Considered, NPR. Just search for the Martin Atkins Minute. Just search for Martin Atkins Minute, Bad Day. It's a really good, couple of my students foleyed it. I almost didn't, I think that first one came out 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I almost didn't release it because, here we are talking Pill, American Bandstand, Johnny Rotten, 9 Inch Nails. Oh, we haven't talked about 9 Inch Nails, but we talked about 9 Inch Nails. Ministry this and right? It's difficult for people in our position to talk about, I quit Pill, I had a fever, my visa was running out, I planted trees for Tico Torres from Bon Jovi, and This Is Not a Love Song came on the radio, and it rained. And fortunately, it rained because you couldn't see the tears streaming down my face and the sweat from the fever running down the inside of my overalls. Like, I mean, and you know, sometimes sometimes you just want to release positive stuff, right? But I think so many people have gotten some benefit from that, me included, that I'm really pleased I did. And I think I started to look at things a little bit differently after I released that.
I always thought that after you left Pill that I haven't really ever listened or bought a Pill album after that. So it's kind of like when Lufti left Einstürzende Neubauten. It's kind of like changes the whole picture altogether, you know?
Oh my God. I have a big, Mark Spivey's probably seen it and played it. This big fucking spring that Mufti used to play on stage with Pigface. But
I can't imagine. Like, was he just bashing his typical style with you guys when he was with you?
Well, he had this band, I want to say Norway or Stockholm, Gry, Gry. He kind of brought them as his backing band. And I mean, I remember a show. This is what was so great about Pigface, what is so great about Pigface, a show in Montreal where we actually had an outbreak of spinal meningitis. Mark Spivey was there, he remembers. And Dave Wright from Not Breathing, we had to leave him in hospital in Rochester or somewhere.
Yeah.
Across the border. And honestly, people were dropping like flies. You know, as somebody from the Canadian Board of Health would say, what are your symptoms? And people would say, what do you mean? Well, do you have a sore throat? Oh, do you have a fever? Oh, are you itching? Oh, people manifested whatever they said, right? So in the end, I played drums with Mufti, and he was my drum tech for Pigface. He was handing me water and drumsticks. He's super nice guy.
I also know that we should say that, you know, to get your coffee and the rest of the stuff, you would go to Martin Atkins /bigcartel.com.
Yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on my Big Cartel. There's also, we're migrating stuff to martinatkins.com.
Okay.
You know, Band Smart. Oh, I'm not trying to sell anything. But Band Smart.
Look at that. How long did that take to compile?
Too long. Like 3 years too long. And
really?
Just look at that. Anybody who knows about, see, I'm ADD and I'm an educator, so I know I can't just write words on a page and expect students to follow along, or even myself. But the reason I showed you that is you can download that for free at martinatkins.com.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Are you still at Millikan University?
Yeah, I've been revamping the music industry program there for the last couple of years. It was through Millikan. What a fucking great bunch of people. Millikan is 2.25 hours south of Chicago in a place called Decatur, Illinois. It's this beautiful Oxford-like campus in a little bit of a troubled city. It's lost a lot of its major industry, but they've allowed me to change the program. I require 3 internships now instead of 1, which is tough. And now I have to facilitate those internships. But they've also allowed me to start a conference there called MMX, Midwest Music Expo, which we just did the second one in May of this year. We tripled attendance. We had people from 23 countries come to this one. Lol Tolhurst from The Cure, Randy Blythe, Galen Lee, Wendy Day, some really great people. But they've also enabled me to do this school bus where on this last Pigface tour, we had a second bus following the tour bus with 8 students, their own tour manager, and a couple of mentors. And so they got to run the merch booth. We have screens in front of the Pigface show.
Yeah.
They do the screens. They're like, where do you want us? I'm like, on stage. So they were like this far from the audience, but without being visible, which was spine tingling for them. Sammy, one of the students, Greta just gave him her bass. Said, yeah, go play. It was to have them run merch with 1,200 people at Thalia Hall, Chicago. It's just like, it's a blizzard, and you're changed by these things. So these are all what I would call the pillars of the new program. Real shit. We have our own label. We're working with the Crates in Tokyo. I don't know if you know that company. It's almost like a Kickstarter-y vinyl thing. They facilitate vinyl. So we get to do that, but we also get to talk to the CEO of the company, So yeah, I'm still at Milliken and enjoying that very much.
And the people get a credit for doing all that work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a benefit.
The touring thing is 3 credits. I'm starting to do. If anybody wants to follow me on Twitter, I'm Martin, Marteen, 4 E's, just like the old days. But I'm also going to start doing a free touring class. That was the first class that I taught at Columbia 16 years ago. That's my book. That's my jam. And I think what's happening is it's going to be very loosely structured. We're going to wing it for the first go around. But anybody who then wants to take a test after 10 weeks can apply for 3 credits as a scholarship to go to Milliken. I don't know how that stuff's working, but I think we're doing some pretty interesting shit. But for most people, you can get these classes for free. It will be me, and you get a book, and I'll help you with some shit. Because we were talking before about touring and crazy stuff. The more stuff I can take care of that's just logistics and common sense, that enables me to be a crazy bastard with 7 drum kits. You can't neglect everything and turn up with 7 drum kits. People will just punch you, So I'm not all about the business because I'm all about the business. I'm all about the business because it enables me to be a fucking lunatic and look over here and it's Danny Carey, and look over here and it's Bradley Bills and Leanne and Randy Blythe and Kurse Mackey and fucking
just a circus.
Yeah.
I know Danny really enjoyed that. I mean, I've talked to him about it. He loves doing that, man. And it must be a real blast to have Danny there with you.
It was interesting. He showed up in Minneapolis, and the electricity at soundcheck. I was just playing a beat, and I look over, and Danny's like, fucking playing a beat, and Charles Levi's like, people who are just like, yeah. Nobody was on stage during soundcheck eating a sandwich. Let's put it that way. Everybody was like, top game,
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. What an amazingly nice person he is. And
can't do better than that mold.
And he's the most. I told him 10 years ago, I'm like, I watched you drum, and I alternate between being inspired to go and throw down some beats and practice more, or put my arms in a lawnmower and just give up, and that's when he said, yeah, wow, thank you. And he said, and once I get these titanium plates out of my arm, I'll be even better. I'm like, he didn't have to tell me.
Nothing stops him, man.
He comes out. Oh, I've got this picture of him. Like, when you pull the curtain back from your bunk, I had this strange bunk all the way in the back of the bus sideways. And, it's kind of a tradition. In '94, when Danny came out, something was bugging me. I'm like, what's bugging me? I'm like, oh, I know what's bugging me. We don't have a bunk for Danny. And Tool weren't a huge thing in the early '90s. They were cool, but I just didn't want to be rude and inhospitable. So for the 10 days that Danny was out, me and Jolly alternated the couches and the floor in the front of the bus. It was like being punched in the kidneys all night, you know. But he was just so nice to everyone. Just so nice to everyone. It should be a yardstick, really.
Yeah, really. So you actually fit the whole cast and crew on one bus, or do they travel in the school bus as well?
No. Well, we might.
Could be a good idea for next time.
We might have taken 2 bunks of the school bus for some crew. I'm not sure, but we had a 17 bunk bus.
Oh wow! I never knew those existed.
Yeah, and maybe it's a good thing you don't know that they exist, because like you know, in the front lounge,
Yeah.
it's like a train. You know the luggage racks on a train where you put your bag, sit down? Yeah, well, you might do that, but that's somebody's bunk. So there's a couple of safety straps, and these bunks come down. So if you're somebody who likes to be in your bunk in the afternoon and chill out and be private and get your thoughts together, you're fucked if you have one of those front bunks, you know. But it's the only way for us to do it, really.
It's too funny. I got something else to show you too. Bob, to show it.
Uh-oh.
Buddy, this is Yukio from Bar Sai in Tokyo, and you showed up there one night, and you really made his life. And the one thing that I love is that when people do that to my buddy there, he's like one of my best buddies, and you left this awesome Martin doll. I don't have it in the picture there, but the Martin doll is so awesome. It's like a oh, there. Okay, there he is. Yeah, there he is. Is that something that you could buy somewhere, or is that limited edition? How is that?
No, they're on my they're in my big cartel. But
okay, cool.
That's another interesting night in Tokyo, because I was fucking tired. Dark Matter Coffee flew me over there to launch Get the Fuck Out of Bed in Tokyo, and I did my pill talk and did some other stuff, and I was in my room, and I know you're in Tokyo all the fucking time, right? And so I thought, is this it? What, I'm gonna watch Hawaii 5-0 in my room? Like, you know, I've got to go do something. And so I Facebooked you. I'm like, you're like, yeah, Bar Sai. I'm like, okay. And I'm like, oh, it's like 40 minutes in a cab. So this is my shyness, right? Kicking in to be like, Martin, perhaps you should stay home, right? Bullshit. And in the end, like 2 a.m, I get in a cab, and it's Tokyo. People are just unconscious, drunk everywhere. And I go into this bar, and it's so fucking cool. He was so nice. And then I'm Facebooking you, and then you said, look to your right. There might be a person called, I don't know the guy's name, and he'll draw a picture. I'm like, what? So I'm having this insane conversation with you, however many thousands of miles away that is. And this guy to my right starts sketching a picture.
Yeah, and he's an amazing, quick caricature artist. And he'll do that when we're there. I'll always whisper him to him, be like, draw that guy. And so he'll just draw this guy and hand it to him. And the guy will be like, ah. So I'm glad you got that experience. That's a legendary place, I think.
Did Yukio send you a shirt?
Yeah, he's always sending me Bar Sai shirts.
I bar side Tokyo says, "Stay the fucking side."
Oh no, I didn't get one of those yet. Really?
I
Oh,
see. I think when I thought he was saying, a shirt will go to him, right, to you.
okay,
And
probably is.
I remember thinking at the time, is he saying that he will send one, or is he telling me to send one? I'll send you one. So yeah, he sent me some pictures of he's holding his doll and a bag of coffee and wearing a "Stay the fucking side" t-shirt. It's super cool. But you know what I really liked about that night, Kevin, was that I think just like some of the people we've talked about, and I put Kevin Lyman into this category as well, actually. But I think that, we met each other a fucking long time ago. And I was going to say we haven't always gotten along great, but I want to change that to sometimes I think I've been an absolute fucking twat, right? And I've had my moments of when I haven't been as thoughtful and as together as I hope I am now. And so what I really liked about that night is that we were talking and it was cool as hell. And I'm in a taxi in Tokyo and I'm meeting your friends. But I really enjoyed that interaction, which
Yeah.
it felt like we were on a path that would lead to a conversation like this.
Yeah, absolutely. And it felt like we're at the pub together.
Yeah, yeah.
5,000 miles apart.
Yeah.
Martin, you've always been nice to me. I've never detected a time where you weren't. You've always, you've invited me so many times to partake, and I'm so thankful for that. And I don't know. I always thought it was great that I got to witness. Wasn't it early in your relationship with Katrina when you were in the house?
Yeah, that was really early. That was really early. And today
You've got 4 kids.
Yeah, and it's Ian's 25th birthday today.
Yeah, happy birthday, Ian.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, I'm so proud of all of them. But yeah, it's 25 years ago today that he was born, and yeah, so we've been in a relationship for a long time.
I was happy to see you. You seemed really happy, and you guys seemed like really in love, and there was nothing going wrong in your department in that house. You brought in the sunshine, and like I never felt any weirdness from you in any way. You've always been a gentleman to me.
Well, thank you. And I don't know if you remember this. I went to my Shakespearean playbook during the process. I remember, and I thought, no one's going to believe me. And I went off for an afternoon, and I came back because the whole house was fractured. And I came back and I was like, well, fuck him. What does he know? Fuck. And I was just waiting until somebody said to me, fuck who? What are you talking about? I'm like, oh, fucking Trent Reznor. Fuck that guy. And people, well, what has he said? And so I'm going back to Henry V, Part 2, I think, where the dying king says to his son, if you want to unite your country, take them to war. And so I said, well, I had just had a coffee with Trent, and he said, oh, you're working with Skinny Puppy. They're over. And I think, and I'm like, well, fuck that guy. And I thought everybody in the house was going to say, yeah, you're lying, Martin. Nice try. We appreciate it. But everybody in the house started to like puff themselves up like, yeah, fuck that guy. We'll show that guy. Fuck him. I'm like, oh my God, it's working.
How did you enjoy working with Trent after that when you did? I gather that was afterward.
Well, I think it was it before and after? So I did the Head Like a Hole thing. He was on the Gub album. We used to hang out in Cleveland when we went through there with Brian Brain. He played trumpet or saxophone with Brian Brain in '85. I don't know. We always got along great, and then it started to go a little bit. It went a little bit south when he wanted to put Suck on the Broken EP. I don't know if it was him or management. That got complicated, and then it was always my position that if you bring me in and tell me what to play, that's a session. If you bring me into a studio and roll blank tape, that's a co-write.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And so Wish was blank tape when I arrived in the studio, and so
I'm getting you.
Yeah, that kind of pissed me off.
Yeah,
you know, and it's easy to say.
He's got room to pay tribute to who would be in on the writing as well. You know, he's not like shy on Bo.
Yeah, and maybe that was Flood. You know, I don't know, but that just didn't. It just I thought we were really generous with Trent. I remember a conversation with Steve Albini where we were at Chicago Tracks. Which have you recorded at Chicago Tracks?
We did that thing with Adrian Sherwood there.
Okay, so we're there doing the Gub album. I remember Steve Albini leans back and says to me, "Why are we flying this kid out from Cleveland? We could save the plane fare." He said, "I know somebody who can play keyboards." I'm like, I'm not flying him out to play keyboards. He's kind of a mate. And I think he could sing on a track or something, you know. So, he was
pretty young at that point and pretty, I mean, you saw it. I mean, he was pretty looking for which way to go. He was like young and impressionable.
Yeah, I mean,
if you saw that part, you know, you don't see the Trent Reznor that everyone else sees.
Right. And I get, you know, people say to me now, well, will there be somebody the equivalent of Trent Reznor involved in? I'm like, Trent Reznor wasn't the equivalent of Trent Reznor when he was involved. Right?
Exactly.
I mean, he'd sold 5,000 albums when he was involved with Pigface. And in fact, Steve Silver, my friend, storyteller, door guy, security guy at the Exit, Killing Joke tour manager, I think in between recording, he was helping me drywall my loft on Wabash Avenue. I mean, there are pictures of Trent spackling the walls at the loft. Yeah.
Advanced entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And hey, speaking of my voodoo doll, if you watch the NPR Tiny Desk concerts, Big Bird, Wu-Tang Clan, in the background of all of their sessions is
nice.
It's the most hilarious thing ever.
I am definitely going to order one of those. Be on the lookout for my order.
I'll send you. Hey, you have those figures that you do, right?
Yes, I also make a figure that I made when I was going through the cancer thing. He's called Basil. He's like a soft vinyl figure from Japan, made in Japan.
You want to do a swap?
Yeah, we'll do a swap. Let's do it.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me, Martin. It's been awesome speaking to you, Martin. Thank you so much for taking some time out on a Sunday to join us here on Patreon and give us the exclusive details. I don't think you're going to see much other online with this much dirt.
It's been really nice to chat with you, Kev. We want to do another one in 6 months, and we'll look at the China stuff or something.
Let's do it. Let's absolutely do it. I think we've got lots more room that we could cover, and plus, I love talking with you. You're a great conversationalist, and that's why people hire you to come and speak and talk about things. Is because you know what's going on, and you're great at speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to pass on a hello to Katrina and your family, and everybody else out there at the location where you're at, safely staying, I gather. And that's it for me here.
Thanks, Kevin. And
thanks, Martin. We'll
hello
speak
to everyone, and thanks. I really appreciate it.
Big love to you.
Okay, back at you, man.